Welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Radio Show with Chris, Joe, and Rob. The crew is taking your calls, so dial in at 1-800-808-5548.
And welcome back to the Real Estate Rat Pack Show. You know, this is one of those great shows. We have a lot of good information in there. Obviously, we talked about home staging. We've talked about home improvement. We talked about clean air. You know, and now what we're going to be really talking about is what ties all this together at the very end of the day, and how do we know sometimes that all this work is done correctly, efficiently, effectively, and meets a lot of codes. And for that, obviously, we've got Ashley in the studio right now. Ashley, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing today?
Man,
outstanding.
Doing great.
Well, and also,
as always,
also worth mentioning, a relatively new sponsor to the Real Estate Rat Pack
Yes,
Show.
absolutely.
Woohoo! We always work with the best here as for our sponsors, and that's one thing that for our listeners, you guys can know. A lot of the folks that we have on the show, well, not a lot, all of the folks we have on the show, between the godfather of real estate over here and Mr. Kelso over there, the maestro of mortgage, and myself, the
king of credit swing.
We know quite a lot of folks in the real estate industry. Multiple thousands. So we have the fortunate opportunity to work with and get to know the experts in the industry. So everybody we have on our show are folks that we've gotten to know and we trust, and we know their expertise and that type of thing. So you can always feel comfortable in consulting with them and appreciating the value that they can bring to you guys.
Which is why we can work without a script. You know, we don't have to have a script.
Yeah.
We've got people who know what they're talking about.
You know, it's funny, the listeners, you guys, you would never know. So many of the guests that come on our show are a ball of nerves before they come on the show. And when we try to tell them, but they soon figure it out during the show. We're like, look, we're just going to be talking to you about what you know a whole lot about. So as soon as we start asking questions about their expertise, they kind of relax, and they're like, oh, yeah, I actually know all this
except
stuff.
for poor Bobby.
Yes, Bobby was still a mess. But anyway, we love Bobby. Bobby with Guillen Homes.
Yes.
Anyway, so moving into that, you know, one of the things that I kind of wanted to ask, since we have both of you guys in the studio, and it does make sense to ask, was this that, you know, when you do a project, Shane, or you are coming in behind somebody, you know, to fix a project, that type of thing, do you see a lot of people that are, you know, well, for lack of better words, violating codes or being unconcerned about codes? And how often is an inspector involved in those kind of projects to make sure that what they are doing is up to code?
Oh, I see that all the time. A lot of times people will go in and or quote unquote contractors will, excuse me for that.
Emphasis.
They'll totally bypass the whole permit part of the process, because that is a true pain in this industry, because you actually have to have somebody come by.
Or painting somewhere else. But
Right. You actually have to have someone coming by and inspecting the work that's going on. And in that, what I've found, and it's funny, me and Ashley Bowles was talking about it earlier, it is crucial for any type of large project that the contractor's working on a draw basis, where he'll get a specified amount down, and throughout the process he will ask for draws. It's crucial to have a qualified inspector like Ashley Bowles to come in, who's going to advocate for the homeowner, not the contractor, because you don't want to just take the contractor's word for it. Well, I got this done, I got that done, and now I need another $3,000 or $4,000. You need a qualified inspector to inspect the work.
yes.
And you know, Rob, maybe this is something you can chime in on, because I don't know, but if you do a project where, you know, code violations and that thing can come in, so you know you're doing a project and they don't involve an Ashley and they get it knocked out, and now, you know, a year later, 2 years later, they go to sell the house, and the inspector comes in and there are kind of code violations. Rob, do you see that kind of stuff
actually,
out there?
even on the seller's disclosure, which is a state required document, every residential home has to have a full seller's disclosure. There's a couple exceptions, you know, through divides and things like that. But they actually ask you, have you done any work without a permit?
Oh.
As one of the very first things that are going to be on your seller's disclosure. So it's very important that you are working with somebody who understands the permitting process. Now, Ashley, you're unique in the fact that you're an inspector, but you also used to do a lot of remodeling, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had my own construction company for a while when I first came down here to Texas. And one of the biggest things about getting a a remodel done or a major remodel, when the homeowner has the actual building plans, if you have the original blueprints, that can make your remodel so much easier. It's almost like a dream to have them, especially if you are the contractor. That way you know exactly where the structural walls are, what's all tying the house together, where certain things are. And like I said, you can find a lot of those documents down at your city hall and stuff like that, and they have those prints on file. So that is a good idea if you can acquire those before you start your major renovations.
Awesome.
And so in the process, how many people from a remodeling standpoint actually have you come and inspect their work? Do you have that happen often?
Not as often as I would like.
Probably not as often as you should.
It may not. It may not be on people's radar screens, like Shane was talking about. That they've been working with this remodeler for a while, and they kind of take them at their word that they're doing it correctly. But even on a new construction home, I always recommend bring an inspector in there, because even though Shane is a great contractor, sometimes his contractors he might miss something. It actually helps him do his work, and so he knows he's given a quality job, to have a third party come in and say, hey, you know what, this is not into code, or this is the wrong. You actually have to have it in some framing things. You got to make sure that lumber sizes match and things of that nature. Then sometimes that gets missed.
Oh,
well,
most definitely.
Let's face it. I mean, your industry is a lot like mine in that there's a low cost of entry.
Right.
So that translates to, in my industry, somebody saying, "Oh, my credit's jacked up. I'm gonna get on the internet and read about how do I send in letters, and oh wow, I had some good results, so I'm gonna talk about it." Now my family member, my cousin wants me to do it for him. And next thing you know, I'm a credit expert, and I'm taking people's money to do the job. Not too unlike, in the home remodeling job. I mean, it doesn't cost a lot to buy a hammer and a saw and get out there and start calling yourself a contractor.
And you can always get your brother-in-law to do it.
So you can end up with some well-intentioned people who, it may have had in the past some good results, but the test of an expert isn't, doing the project, putting the door in good and doing that one time and that type of thing. The test of an expert is when things go wrong, and how well you handle problem situations and that type of thing. The things you don't know, we have these shows regularly here, what you don't know can hurt you, because you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know that it's out of code to put a cat door in the exterior garage door, not that I've done that, you don't know that you're creating big problems down the road. So you may have somebody who's good with a hammer and a saw, and they've done a few brother-in-law projects, that type of thing, and you've hired that person, and they don't know that they're doing code violations. They don't know that they're not doing stuff that's up to code, because it's not on their radar. They don't know what they don't know.
And speaking of construction, and Ashley, this is one thing I think it's important for everybody to know. Whether you are buying a new home, okay, or you're remodeling, most people don't realize is having a home inspector doing that process, and I'm using a new home that's being built from the ground up, is very important, because a lot of times these big builders, even some of these smaller builders, as Rob was saying, they're using contractors. They're using third-party individuals to come in from the foundation all the way to the sticks, to the the walls, cabinetry, et cetera, et cetera. You can go in there and inspect that entire process to ensure that that home is being built to code and matching everything, correct?
Oh, yes, most definitely. And that brings up a good point, because right now you have a lot of your home builders building new homes. So instead of them having two guys on staff that are managing, 5 to 10 jobs apiece, now they're looking after 30. So if you're one man looking after 30 projects that are in different stages of the building process, it's much easier to miss stuff. Not that you're intentionally missing it, but you have so many people working on those projects at different times that it's inevitable that something is going to get missed eventually.
The Peter principle kicks in at that point.
Right.
You really can't manage more than 15 people effectively.
Yeah, no, I
want
agree.
everyone to understand that Ashley is a Texas Real Estate Commission licensed inspector. They have to go through a lot. And I used Ashley the other day on a house over in the Heights I sold, and he had to do a crawl underneath this house and things like that. And we found things on this house that I don't think the previous or the current owner knew, and it was incredible. I mean, it truly was. He was so thorough and observant about things. I was very, very impressed on how good he was at what he does.
Well, shameless plug for our sponsors.
No,
again,
it's a fact.
you know, we don't bring we say this all the time on the show. We're silly, we're goofy, we tongue in cheek humor, all this sort of thing, and that's to me is the only way to live life. But at the same time, everybody we bring on this show truly is an expert at what they do, and that's just another example. Ashley is an awesome at what he does, and that's why we have allowed him to be a sponsor on the show.
And we're coming up to the lightning round right now. 2 minutes to go, so in 20 seconds or less, do me a favor. I want to go around the room. Everybody let us know what's the one thing you want our listener base to leave with today as far as home improvement. Vaughn, we'll start with you.
Protect your health, protect your home.
I like that. Protect your health, protect your home, and protect yourself.
Yeah.
That's not a bad one either right there.
Ensure that the people that you hire are truly the professionals that they purport themselves to be. Double check and check their backgrounds, and then triple check again just to make sure.
I would just like to have people do a little bit of research when they're getting their homes worked on, check on the contractor, check their background. Also, when you get a lowball bid, find out what kind of materials they're using.
Wow.
There's a reason it was low.
Yeah.
Rob?
Well, that's a great thing to talk about. If it seems to be too good to be true, it is.
It is.
So, do some background check. It's your home. It's your investment. Make sure you do get qualified people in your home.
How about you, Joe?
I have a good one for you. When you're doing all these projects, don't run your credit up and get a bunch of those, Home Depot 10% off credit cards and all that sort of thing. Be credit aware, credit smart when you're doing these kind of projects.
We've mentioned Home Depot twice. Can I invoice them now?
Yes.
Exactly,
Okay,
right?
excellent.
And my words is, use an expert, what we have on the show, on the Real Estate Rat Pack show, and make sure you consider everything with the financial sense you need to make sure you do. Keep the financial sense out there. Again, for all these individuals, go out to the Real Estate Rat Pack show. You can find us anytime. Until next time, have a great week.
And you've been listening to the Real Estate Rat Pack. The question is, who's Frank, who's Sammy, who's Dean, and who's the other guy?
Chris is Frank,
I'm
he's
Dean.
Dean, and I'm Sammy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So tune in to the really big show every Saturday at 9 a.m. right here on 100.7 The Word, KKHT.